What's up, everybody? Marvel the Cross 316 back with another comic book flashback. Today we are looking at Daredevil issue number 9. This issue came out in August of 1965, and today we have a pretty cool tale here where Daredevil is actually going to be fighting in another country. Yes, that's right. He's going to be fighting in this European country that we'll learn where it's at and who this villain is. We'll learn a lot about what's going on here. It's a pretty unique issue. It's something a little different from what we've been looking at. And we're also going to see if Matt Murdock regains his eyesight. That's the main thing we'll be focusing on today as well. So today's title is That He May See. That's exactly what I said. We're going to be focusing on seeing if Matt Murdock will have his eyesight restored. We've seen in the last issues that Karen Page, the girl that Matt Murdock has definitely fallen in love with, she also adores Matt Murdock, and she wants just for Matt Murdock to see her and just have the ability to see. And she's been trying in the last few issues to have Matt Murdock undergo this operation so that he can see, but he's been trying to avoid that because he feels that if he gains the ability to see again, then he might lose his powers. And so that's the one thing we have to think about it. Will Daredevil cease to exist if Matt Murdock undergoes the operation? So before we get started with today's issue, this issue is brought to you by Smilin' Stan Lee, who wrote this issue. We have the wondrous Wally Wood doing the layouts and artwork. We also have Bouncy Bobby Powell also doing the pencil work and artwork. And then Sam Rosen on the lettering page. And so let's go ahead now and get started with today's issue. And so we start out the issue here. We see that Daredevil is going to confront these guys. They are on a boat, and they look like they are hijacking this guy's boat, basically. And so we see that Daredevil is going to swoop on in, and he's going to fight off these guys. And so he's successful in taking pretty much everyone down, except there's one guy that lets out a shot here, and it wings basically Daredevil in his arm. And so Daredevil then dives into the ocean here, and we see that then the Coast Guard comes to collect the rest of the villains here. But we see that throughout the rest of this issue, what we're going to see is Daredevil is going to have to fight with a numb arm. And so Daredevil gets back to his apartment here, and he tapes himself up. But again, we got to remember that his arm is injured, and it's going to be injured for the rest of the issue. And so once again, the main focus of this issue, will Matt Murdock regain his eyesight? And so we see right off the bat that Karen Page is the one that confronts him about it again. We see that the doctor that could cure Matt Murdock of his eyesight has actually moved to Lichenberg. It's this weird place in Europe. And so there's just no way for Matt Murdock to be able to regain his eyesight. Is that true? Well, we see that Karen Page also says that she has a surprise when they get back to their office. And we also see just how much she adores Matt Murdock. We're going to see a lot of that. And we're also going to see a lot of jealousy in this issue as well, dealing with Foggy Nelson, Matt Murdock's partner here at this law firm. Foggy Nelson, as we've learned in the last few issues, also loves Karen Page and wants to marry her. He also even wanted to propose to her at one point. But we see here that Karen Page actually loves Murdock more. We also see here that we're going to be introduced to the villain of this issue, and that is Klaus Kruger. And Klaus Kruger is actually the Duke of Litchenberg. And so we see here that he comes on by, and he's going to ask Matt Murdock if he can join him, and he promises Matt Murdock that if he goes with him back to Lichenberg, then basically he'll be able to have his eyesight operated on by Dr. Van Eyck. And so because Dr. Van Eyck is there in Lichenberg, and we get this whole story that Van Eyck went over there because he liked the scenery and stuff. Well, Matt Murdock, being the wise guy that he is and has the powers to detect lies, notices that in fact the Duke is lying here. And so we see that Matt Murdock is then going to agree to accompany the Duke back to his country here, but he's not going for the reasons that Karen Page thinks he's going. He's actually going because he knows that the Duke is lying and he can't pass up a mystery. And so we see here that Matt Murdock boards the flight with the Duke and they get on the airplane. And so we see here again Foggy Nelson hoping that the operation actually doesn't succeed here so that he has a chance with Karen Page. So like I said, a lot of jealousy going on here. We see that the plane then arrives to this medieval fortress looking place. I mean, it looks like it's when we look at this place, it looks like it's from the 1200s, the way it's all set up. We learn that the Duke is in charge of this castle. And one thing we need to notice right off the bat is that this country is pretty much under suppression. I mean, it's under one rule, one kingship. There's a lot of oppression going on, a lot of rules and stuff. And we see that the Duke, what we're going to learn, he's pretty much a tyrant and he just rules by like an iron fist. Basically, he's kind of like Hitler in a way. Just rules by iron fist, tells people what to do. Has even knights that, as we're going to see later on in this issue, do his bidding. We see that then Matt Murdock comes across Van Eyck here, and he gets looks like he's getting at least an observation done on his eyes. But while Matt Murdock is getting his eyesight looked at, Matt Murdock hears throughout the entire castle all these different murmurs and stuff about defying the Duke and that I'm innocent, I swear, and we must revolt. And so there's a lot of murmuring going around as to the citizens of the country wanting to revolt against the Duke. And so after Matt Murdock has his eyesight looked at, we see that then he goes and changes into Daredevil disguise here, and he's going to learn more about these revolts here. We see that then a bunch of knights break into these people's house here, and they're going to basically battle these guys here. And Matt Murdock, as Daredevil, learns that these are no ordinary knights; they're actually robots. And so the Duke actually has a robot army, basically. So Daredevil is not only going to try to stop the Duke as he's a tyrant, but also he's going to have to tackle these robot knights. So we see here that Daredevil then follows as the drawbridge is almost coming to a close, and this is where he meets the Duke for the first time, and as Daredevil. And the Duke doesn't know much about Daredevil, but he knows that he is an intruder and that he orders his knights to take down Daredevil. Daredevil puts up a fight, but we see here that one of the knights strike the injured arm of Daredevil, so that comes into play. And so then Daredevil is then taken hostage by the Duke, and the Duke says by sunrise, Daredevil will meet his end. And we see here throughout the rest of this issue just how much of a tyrant the Duke is. He wants absolute power, and he also wants to, at one point, control the earth and conquer the earth. And so that's his main goal here. And like he said, as we said, he's about Hitler. We see that Daredevil basically compares him to Hitler, saying that he's as nutty as a fruitcake, but so was a little house painter named Hitler, and look at the damage he's caused. So we see here that after the Duke leaves, Daredevil is then going to make his escape here, and he's going to also lead these people out of their cells as well. And so one thing I want to let y'all know right off the bat is that Daredevil makes a lot of wisecracks in this issue. He reminds me of Spider-Man a lot in this issue, the way that he jokes around. It's kind of out of character, kind of threw me off, but it also was very entertaining as well. It's a change of pace. And so we see that Daredevil is going to be the main person that is going to cause this revolution to succeed. And we see that everybody is starting to then evacuate the scene here. And so Daredevil is on his way to leading a successful revolt. And when then comes more knights, Daredevil is going to fight more knights. And then he's going to go back and check up on Van Eyck, as he knows that the Doctor is also being held prisoner here in this castle. So he's going to return as Matt Murdock to check up on him. Back in the States, we see that Karen Page continues to think about Matt Murdock, and we see that Foggy Nelson gets so jealous that he then smashes a portrait of himself. And then we see that Karen Page is going to check up on Foggy Nelson here, but Foggy can't really break it to her that the thing that's not really hurting is not his hand, but his heart. And so then back in Europe here, we see that Matt Murdock is going to have his eyesight looked once again, this time because the Doctor says we gotta just make it look like we're working together. But all of a sudden we see that the robots then come into the room, hearing what Dr. Van Eyck said. They take him again hostage, and while the Doctor is being led away by these robots, we have Matt Murdock, who has the chance to turn to Daredevil. So he changes back to Daredevil, and he's going to then see that there is a full-scale revolution taking place right here in Lichenberg. And we see that the robots are going to be focusing on these humans. That gives Daredevil the chance to then go after the Duke. And so we see that the Duke and Daredevil are going to then fight it out once again within this castle. And one thing we need to know about the Duke is that he's also skilled in hand-to-hand combat. So Daredevil is actually going to have to put up a strict fight against the Duke of Litchenbad here. I've been saying Lichenberg, it's actually Lichenbad. So we see here that Daredevil and the Duke of Litchenbad go at it once again. We see that all this time the Duke has had this force field around himself, but we see that Daredevil then releases that force shield as he finds the buttons to his throne, causing the force shield to go away. So then Daredevil and the Duke finally are going to square off equally here. And so Daredevil and the Duke continue to fight it out here. And we see that what's going to cause the Duke to lose here is he thinks that he's going to cause 2 billion people, basically the entire world's population at this point, to die by this big bomb that he has apparently in his castle. But we see here that Van Eyck is going to be the one main person to prevent that from happening as he goes into this secret lair here where everything, all the electrical systems are at. He pulls down the levers, causing a bunch of radiation to then he's exposed to this radiation, causing himself to die. So that saves 2 billion people right there. Daredevil was able to save 2 billion people thanks to Van Eyck. And so then Daredevil and the Duke square off once again, and the Duke then all of a sudden falls off of the bridge here, leading to his death. And so we see that the Duke was not successful in defeating Daredevil, and it costed his life. And so back in the States, we see that a report comes back. It's a letter from Matt Murdock, and it reads that the operation did not occur. And so he's going to basically return to the United States, back to the United States the way that he left, being blind. And it looks like fate has shown that they basically want Daredevil to continue to be in existence, that Matt Murdock needs to continue to be Matt Murdock, be Daredevil, the man without fear. And so we see here that we leave the issue off with Foggy Nelson still jealous of his best friend Matt Murdock, and jealous that Karen Page still is in love with Matt Murdock. We see that Karen Page is feeling down and out because she wanted Matt Murdock to have that eye operation. And we see that if only she could show how much she adores him. And so that's how we end this issue. I hope you like it. We'll be looking at issue number 10 next time. But until next time, go ahead and give this video a like, Comment down below what you liked about this issue. Subscribe if you have not subscribed. And I will see y'all next time.